see, Ditko, his version of what he was doing was true. It's just that it didn't fit Stan's commercial sense. And Stan had an uncanny commercial sense. And any artist that fought him on it, I think, was making a terrible mistake, because Ditko could have made a fortune. Now, I guess he doesn't care. He didn't care about money.
Well, he doesn't seem to care at all even now when they ask him.
Right. I mean, so his objectives were different than mine. I was just trying to pay my mortgage off, and I wanted to get the best-selling book I could, and I stayed with Spider-Man as long as possible because I'm making money, you know. And he baffled me, and I admire him, and I wish he hadn't done it, because I would love to have seen him independently wealthy now.
Spider-Man sales may have gone through the roof, but the Ditko fans were disappointed.
Steve Ditko had got so much of his DNA in all of the characters that he created. I mean, I know that there were good issues of Spider-Man after he finished the book with issue 35, something like that. I know that John Romita did some very good work on Spider-Man, but I kind of lost interest with the first non-Ditko issue, because the character was so much a part of Ditko's world that it looked kind of dull when it was an ordinarily muscled man in a Spider-Man costume.
Although he left Marvel, he didn't, of course, leave the world of comics. First, he went to a company called Charlton, based in Connecticut, who never enjoyed the success of the big companies and paid considerably less, but rather tellingly had a reputation for letting artists and writers do more or less what they wanted without editorial intervention. And it was at Charlton that he created a bizarre character who, I believe, gave us our first glimpse of Ditko's peculiar worldview: the Question. The Question was a detective named Vic Sage, whose only real powers were his unwavering moral compass and his intelligence. Donning a featureless mask, he would release a special gas that turned him into the Question, ready to fight crime in any way necessary.
You can start to see the weirdness in the books after Spider-Man and Doctor Strange, the immediate late 60s books, the Charlton characters, the Question. There's a lot of didacticism in that character.
There was something about Ditko's characters where I began to wonder whether they'd come to him in dreams. There was something so odd about them that they looked like the kind of almost nonsensical characters that you might see the name of or the image of in a dream and jot it down when you woke up.
But the Question, with his uncompromising take on law and order, comes across like a limp-wristed liberal when compared to Ditko's most extreme creation, Mr. A. Ditko created Mr. A for an independent comic publisher called Wits End. Mr. A was a radical, no-nonsense vigilante who had a very low tolerance of anyone who infringed the rights of the individual and would mete out severe punishments to those who foolishly strayed into the quicksand of moral ambiguity.
Anybody who'd even committed the merest of crimes was wandering into this poisonous grey area. They were tainted, and they could only expect the kind of terrible punishment that his Mr. A was likely to mete out to them.
Mr. A's world was one of black and white, right and wrong, good and evil. And it's clear that those ideas were influenced by Ditko's interest in the work of this woman, Ayn Rand.
You see, my main interest and purpose, both in literature and in philosophy, is to define and present the image of an ideal man.
Ayn Rand enjoyed a surge of popularity in the US after releasing her philosophical novels, The Fountainhead and Atlas Shrugged. Both works of fiction, they expressed Ayn Rand's theories of individualism. She believed man's ultimate goal was personal fulfillment through a rational code of morality, a worldview that she referred to as objectivism. Steve was profoundly influenced by objectivism and used his art to spread the word in the form of Mr. A.
Mr. A's black and white card symbolizes the law of identity. It identifies the two moral potentials possible, the good and the evil, and by one's chosen action, the best or the worst potential can be actualized. The card is also a symbol of justice. For Ayn Rand, justice is objectively identifying a thing for what it is and treating it accordingly. No one gets the unearned. The innocent is not penalized, the guilty is not rewarded.
You know, Steve Ditko obviously would like me to read these and see the light and step into the light and become an objectivist and become an Ayn Randian philosopher like what he is. And instead, I wind up reading them as something closer to classic American outsider art. They move more into the realm of just sheer, beautiful, wonderful, straight from the heart American barking madness than I think, and that's the level on which I appreciate them. They don't even pretend to be stories. There is good, there is evil, there is no grey area.
One of the stories that I remember hearing, I think from Marv Wolfman, about Steve Ditko was him going to visit Steve Ditko when I think Steve was living above a thrift store somewhere in New York, and they'd had a pleasant conversation, and before Marv Wolfman left, Steve Ditko said, I just want to show you something. And he took a little white empty calling card and took a magic marker, drew a line down the middle and shaded one half of the card in black and said, there is white and there is black and there is nothing in between.
Ditko's creations, Mr. A and The Question, were a big influence on the character Rorschach in Alan Moore's classic graphic novel, Watchmen.
The most unpleasant right-wing character is Rorschach. He almost ends up as the hero of the book. He's certainly the character who seems to have the most ferocious integrity. Even if his politics are completely mad, he has this ferocious moral integrity that has made him one of the most popular characters in the book. And obviously that ferocious moral drive and integrity, that was kind of my take upon Steve Ditko. Somebody had been interviewing Ditko and had said, have you ever heard of this book, Watchmen? And he said, what's that? And they said, well, it's got this character in called Rorschach. And he said, oh, yes, Rorschach. He's like Mr. A, except he's insane.
Most of Ditko's fans found the character of Mr. A a tad extreme, and I suspect that many were shocked to realise that Ditko's politics were somewhat different to their own.
Kids, meaning teenagers, college students, who were eating up Marvel Comics at that time, did not want to be told, you can either do it the right way or you're wrong. Young people don't like to be told that they're wrong, and Steve was being too stern for them, and he lost them. And he never got it back.
Steve Ditko's return to mainstream comics and more obviously commercial characters came in 1968 when he joined Marvel's biggest rivals, DC, and served up two typically offbeat new creations, The Hawk and the Dove and The Creeper. The Hawk and the Dove seems to be an attempt by Steve to dramatise the two opposing sides of the debate over the Vietnam War.
The Hawk side of the equation is perhaps a little bit non-intellectual, perhaps a bit headstrong, but he's a big, rugged, can-do action hero. The Dove half of the equation is a simpering, effete character in a lackluster blue and white costume. And all he does, he doesn't get into fights, he stands around and agonises about the need for violence. It was obvious where Ditko's sympathies lied in the equation.
He then baffled everyone with a creation known as the Creeper, a superhero with strange powers.